Hello, everyone. This is Donna from the LaSalle Public Library, welcoming you to tonight's virtual program. Natalie Martin, our master gardener, will be joining us in just a minute for Cooking with Garbage, What Could Be Better? I just want to make one little announcement before we start, because I know Natalie has a number of recipes that she's posted for us. I did want to point out an upcoming program on September 13th at 7 o'clock, so that'll be a different day, Monday, and a different time, 7 p.m. Along with some other libraries, we will be hosting an evening with Gary Ginsberg. Gary Ginsberg is the author who wrote First Friends, a book that talks about the special insiders in each of, or in the president's administration and in their lives in general. And I think he has 12 or 13 examples in his book of key relationships that made a difference in policy and decisions. So I hope you'll join us for that. I'm listening to the book on audio in the car. I'm enjoying it greatly. You don't have to be a history buff to like this book or this program. It's just very, very interesting. So I hope you'll join us for Gary Ginsberg, September 13th at 7 o'clock. Also, Natalie has another program coming up, and that will be on September 14th. So the 13th, then the 14th, undertaking a big garden project. So this is Natalie explaining to us how we can turn part of our yard into native prairie, or install a raised bed, or make some kind of transition in our landscape. So I hope you'll join us for that. That's on September 14th. And one thing that is not up here yet, but we will be hosting a special September 11th program on Saturday, September 11th. This will be a memorial tour. So it is about an hour long, and we will be going inside the memorial in New York to tour all the parts of it and the meanings behind what was saved and put into the memorial. So I hope you'll join us for September 11th. Also, details on that program will be coming. And now I'm going to stop sharing and ask Natalie to come on, because we are ready to cook with garbage.
Hey, everybody. Hello. Hi. I am happy you guys are here. I'm going to throw up my slides really quick and we'll jump into, I have so much going on today, so don't get overwhelmed. We're going to get to it. But let me share my screen here, and maybe, which one is it? It's over here, I think. We are cooking with garbage today. And Oscar the Grouch is not here. You just have me, Normal Grouch. And we're going to talk about what I mean by garbage first, because not everything is worth stating, right? Not everything is something that you can reuse again. When I specifically talk about cooking with garbage, I'm going to be talking about your fruit and vegetable scraps, maybe some leftovers, other things like that. Obviously, some of you may know that you can use your vegetable peelings or leftover skins, things like that. Again, fruit things like fruit peels, fruit cores, a lot of those things you can use again. And oh, perfect. I was just checking the chat. And then you think about things like, you're getting a little weirder. You're thinking about things like meat, meat bones, sometimes meat fats you can save. Now, fat, not everyone wants to cook with a ton of fat or wants to have a lot of fat in their food, or that's something that they actually throw away. So think about what you prefer to eat when you are saving things. And then dairies. I bet that you didn't know that you could save and reuse some dairy products. So we'll jump into all of those things today, but we got a lot to cover food wise too, and some of them take the whole time. So I want to get those going as soon as possible. I don't know why I have fruits first, because we're going to talk about vegetables. And what we're going to be making today is actually a bone broth. So it's going to be vegetables and meats. But when you think about vegetables, in the picture, you can see we've got onion skins, we've got bell pepper, potato skins. Some of those things are going to save.
Natalie?
Yes.
I can see your recipe and you, but I can't see your pictures. You want to give
So
that a
weird.
shot?
Yeah, I do want to change that. Sorry, everybody. Here, let's try this. It showed it on my screen that I was doing it. Can you see the slides now, Donna?
Absolutely. It's wonderful. And I
Great.
see our big
Great.
red pepper.
Sorry, you guys probably didn't get my Oscar the Grouch joke. There he is. Oops.
Oh, okay.
That's why I was saying Oscar the Grouch is not here. You get this me normal Grouch. So so in the picture on the screen now on the screen, you can see kind of some of those things that you can save. Things like potato skins, and things like that, those tend to degrade very quickly. So if you are going to reuse them, I would recommend reusing them in the same day. Some people take them and make them into actual chips. So you could use the actual inside of the potato for whatever you're going to use it for, and then take those skins and fry them up and make chips out of them, or use your air fryer or something like that. If you have like the leaves, like the carrot tops, things like that, we talked in a previous session, we made gremolata. So you can take anything like that you would use for a pesto or a chimichurri. Those are two sauces. Those are using greens from your garden. So you can use carrot tops instead of that. So if you grew carrots this year, you want to eat the carrots, but you don't know what to do with those carrot tops. There's tons and tons of different uses, but they won't freeze. They won't do very well in the freezer. So you want to use them right away. Other things can last pretty well in the freezer. Things like onion skins, onion pieces, and things like that. Just real quick, in the chat, there was a question about how you obtain the recording. All of these recordings are going to be put up in a couple of days, up on the LaSalle Public Library YouTube page or on their website. You can watch the old programs. Sorry to interject there. But what I do when I save vegetables is if I have onion skins from a recipe, because I cut up an onion, but I didn't have, obviously you're not using the skins a lot for stuff. I just have a bag in my freezer, gallon bag, and I just throw all of them in there. And then when I get enough, whatever that means to you, the bag gets full, you want to make broth, whatever, then I pull it out and I throw it right in. But not everything's going to freeze really well. So that's, if you aren't able to use all of it right away, then you can use it later on. And then meat. Now, meat can get a little iffy. If you're a meat eater at home, you can save those things like bones once you, like if you have a roast or a ham. Both of those things I have here today. This is an old ham bone that I saved, and I pulled as much meat off of it as I could, and then once I got as much off as I couldn't, there was not much else I could do with it. So I put it in the freezer, and now I'm going to pop it in my Instant Pot and make broth out of it. You want to make sure that if you are not using it that day, you're getting it in the freezer immediately so that you don't have any bacteria growth, things like that. Sometimes, and this is something I'm very guilty of, I'll be like, I'm going to put it in the fridge, and then this week I'm going to do it. But I won't, everybody. Spoiler alert, I never do it. So now I try to put it in the freezer immediately, because if it's in the freezer, you can still throw it into your soup pot frozen. It doesn't have to thaw out. So you're not really hurting anything by freezing it right away. And that's where that timing thing comes into play. You want to make sure that if you're not going to use it within 7 days, and sometimes meat's even less, but 7 days is the health department, code. You want to make sure that you're getting that in the freezer. If you have leftover meat, like say you did your ham and you had your ham with your family, and then all of your leftover ham, folks, I'll plan a ham for Saturday, and then I'll be like, okay, and then the next week I'm going to have ham 2 more times as different leftovers. If you feel confident that you're going to do that, amazing, great job. Put that ham in your fridge, and if you're me, you can throw it away in 7 days. But what you could also do is cut it. You can take some of that ham, maybe cube it up and put it in your freezer in specific quantities. Maybe you look up a recipe. Oh, I want to make quiche in the future, so I'm going to cut it into cubes and I'm going to put it in my freezer in a specific amount. Maybe it's a cup, maybe it's 2 cups. I'm going to put it in my freezer, and then I can pull it out. I can put it in omelets. I can put it in quiches, but you want it in those cubes so it's easy for you to use right away. If you know you're going to want to use it for sandwich meat or anything like that, maybe you slice it and put it in your freezer all sliced up in a specific quantity. Maybe it's a half pound, whatever you think you would use reasonably once you thaw it out. Because once you thaw it out, you really only have a few that you should use it without reheating it. Probably 3 days if I was going to use a health department rule. So what we're going to make today is some broth. Now there's 3 different ways. There are 3 different kinds of, there's broth, stock, and bone broth. Now broth is going to be your weakest, least flavorful thing. And now that I just realized I forgot my seasonings downstairs, but that's okay. We'll just do it without. So broth is going to be your least flavorful, but it'll also be the fastest. So if you're in a pinch and say you need something for a recipe, maybe tomorrow or maybe later today, you know you can throw this in your Instant Pot for as much time as you have, and you've got some broth. Then you've got your stock, which is going to be even longer. You're going to cook that for longer. In the Instant Pot, it's usually about 45 minutes. It's going to be a deeper flavor. And then your bone broth is going to be even longer. So you could cook that for 2 to 3 hours in the Instant Pot. And what happens when you have that bone broth is all of that marrow and those nutrients and that gelatin from those bones comes out into the broth. And that's going to give you a really nutrient-rich broth. It's also going to become kind of gelatinous, kind of a different texture. You can still use it just like broth. As soon as you heat it up, it's going to liquefy again. But when it's cold, it will be like a Jello jiggler for reals. So you can, we're not going to do bone broth today just because we're not going to be here for 2 hours. And I kind of would love to show it to you start to finish. But we are going to use an Instant Pot. If you have not used an Instant Pot before, I'm going to turn off my screen share. Just be a video here. Can you see me or is it still Donna's face? I'm going to pin me. There we go. Here is an Instant Pot. If you have not seen one, I don't know if you're living in 2021 or not, but an Instant Pot is a pressure cooker. It's an electric pressure cooker. It has an inside canister. What is this called? Pot? I don't know, whatever you want to call that. And then it's got a lid that's got a rubber seal all around the outside. It's got a little stopper and it's got a mesh pressure valve. So this, the way that it works is you will turn it on and it'll start this. So it's going to seal. So it's going to be airtight, except for this little tiny hole right up here at the top. So it'll be airtight. And then as the things boil on the inside, that steam is going to build up. And as the pressure builds up, it'll lift this little valve and lock that. So the whole thing is pressurized. And what that does is it kind of takes the cooking process that you normally would do and it just magnifies it with that pressure. So it's going to make it so that you can get more cooking done in less time. That pressure is going to add an extra element of time, or it'll add an extra element. So it'll cut down on the amount of time that you need to cook things. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take all of our stuff that I've saved in my freezer or I found in my fridge that was starting to go bad. Like I said, I have a ham bone. You can't really see it. It's kind of gruesome when you do see it. This, I believe, is a pork bone from a shoulder roast, like a pork shoulder. And then I have a variety of aromatics and vegetables. I've got, tip you down so you can see, I've got some green onion. I've got some cilantro. I'm going to do a specific themed broth today based on what I have. And it's going to be a ginger, garlic, scallion broth that I'm going to use for something like a riff on a ramen or some Asian, kind of like an Asian inspired meal later on. I've got some old carrots. And then I've got some regular onions and I've got whole garlic so that you can see I did cut them a little bit, but they're really mostly full. And the onions I have partially done, but the skins are still on. Those skins have nutrients in them. The skins have flavor in them. So there's really no reason to get rid of them. I am going to pull the inside portion of my Instant Pot out. And what we're going to do is get our aromatics and our stuff in there. Normally, on a regular day, I would put whole peppercorns and whole peppercorns and bay leaves in here because that'll add that extra flavor. But I forgot, so I'm not doing that today. B had a question about moldy or limp vegetables. So moldy vegetables are garbage. They are now garbage. We'll talk about them a little bit more later. Limp vegetables are totally fine. If they're like squishy in some parts, like you know how sometimes the cut ends of the carrots get kind of like, I think I might even have one in here. I'll show you. They get kind of squishy. I just cut that part off and put that to the side, and I only use the part. These ones are a little bit bendy, but they still have flavor. They're really only good for broth. So, so you can still use those. On a regular day, I might turn the Instant Pot on saute mode and char these, get them all charred up and start to cook them. And that'll give it a little extra flavor. You could put them on a sheet pan in your oven and roast them. You could grill them. It gives that really amazing charred flavor to them. But we're on a time crunch today. So we're going to keep cruising. And listen, guys, I'm just putting all this stuff right in my pot here. I will show you, and I saved this way on purpose. My cilantro has some brown guys. I don't want those. Get rid of them. You don't want them in here. So make sure that when you're going through, because those will have that sweet rotting kind of flavor to them, you don't want that. So that kind of goes along with your question B. If you have actual moldy or kind of wilted, like wilted is fine. 100% wilted is fine, but moldy, slimy, not good. Get those out of there. But the rest of this is fine. The nice thing, you know, sometimes if this cilantro wasn't on its last leg, exactly, toss that slime. If this cilantro wasn't on its last leg, I would just put the stems in here and use the leaves for recipe topping. I know that some of y'all out there feel like cilantro tastes like soap. I don't have that genetic variant. I love cilantro and want it on most things. So I keep cilantro around all the time. And so I would normally just keep the stems. The stems have that flavor, but you don't like that texture, that stem texture on top of your tacos or your rice or whatever. So, I would normally just put the stems in and then leave the leaves for, you know, tacos or topping, rice, pad thai, things like that. I'm almost done. I've almost got all these cilantros out of here. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to put all of these things in there, whole scallions. And then I have a ginger root here, and I wanted to, I didn't cut it yet because I wanted to talk about it. So ginger is one of those things, and maybe somebody out there is going to watch this and send me some hate mail because maybe this is incorrect. But ginger is one of those things that I buy a ton of. I have it in my house all the time. We make chai latte concentrate and stuff with it. So I have it all the time, and I let it go moldy all the time. But what I do is I cut off the moldy parts and I use the rest of it. So a lot of times these ends of this is a ginger root, in case you're not familiar with it. It's kind of like fibrous on the inside. So, you know, a lot of times I would grate it if I was putting it in a sauce, but these raw ends from where they cut it will get moldy. So I tend to just cut those off, and then the inside is almost always fine. If it's squishy, toss that slime, just like we said before. If it's squishy, we don't want it. But if the inside is firm and yellow, like it is here, then it's fine. And what I'm going to do to put this in there is I'm going to slice it into pieces. You can't see it because my camera's up there. I'm just slicing it. And basically with ginger, the more insides that are exposed, the more flavor is going to be in there. So I'm just cutting it up. Most of the stuff you saw, I didn't really cut it. I just left it whole. This one, I want that ginger flavor to come through. So I'm going to put the slices in there. And then we've got our bones. I'm just popping those suckers right in there, whole. I'm going to try and not touch it so my hands don't get all greasy. But these, like I said, this was a ham bone. And it was kind of an annoying ham bone because the joint was right there in the middle. So I had this big knuckle that I had to like cut around when I was carving it. It's very frustrating for me. And then when you are in there, when you've got all your stuff in there, you are going to put water. B. So each broth is a little different. And I usually it's about whatever I have on hand. Depending on if I know what I'm going to use it for, I will add specific aromatics. Like this one's going to have more of an Asian kind of inspired flavor because I'm adding the ginger and the scallion and the garlic. And that way I can use it maybe for stir fry rice or something like that down the line. And then if I'm doing something like a lot of times around Thanksgiving, you know, I'll get some turkey broth ready, or I'll do turkey broth afterwards. I'll put tons of sage in there because, you know, I'll use it for my stuffing, things like that. So just really think about it, what flavors you like, and then put those flavors in there. Water. Water is the last step on the list. You might notice I didn't put any salt in here. There's a couple reasons for that. Specifically, right now, I have a ham bone in here, and that's going to be salty as heck. So I don't want to add any extra salt because I cannot control how much salt is in my recipes then. I'm also kind of a salt nut. Like, I don't like to use a ton of salt for myself. So I don't put salt in my broth almost ever. And I will then be able to add and control the salt later on in the recipes that I'm using it in. But usually what I would do is just cover up. You can't really see it. And I'll kind of show it to you if I could. Just cover up the stuff in your pot. Now this ham bone is huge, but it will get smaller as I cook it. So I'm just going to kind of fill it up just to the bottom little portion that's going to stick out, and that'll be okay. Most of it's going to be in the water, and you basically want that water to kind of boil up all around it. But if you ever are worried about getting it too full, just stay like an inch below the fill line. If you kind of look, my max line is here. I don't want to go higher than this inch line because you will get like a volcano of broth coming out of your Instant Pot at the end. Ask me how I know. So you can get like a volcano of broth coming out at the end. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to even get close to that height. So I'm about at that 1 inch below my fill line. Almost everything is under the liquid. Let's shove it down in there. And you can kind of see there. How do I know when I have enough water in there? Is that where your question is, Bonnie? Let me know. Send me another message. How do I know about how do I know about the packet? Here's how I know. I got a little ambitious one time and I put too much in. And the thing about Instant Pots is you do have to release the pressure at the end. We'll get there, don't worry. So you do have to release the pressure at the end. And when I released the pressure, pork liquid came shooting out the top all over me. And it didn't get on me because that would have been really hot. I would have remembered that. But it was shot out like probably 1.5 feet in the air. No, I'm not exaggerating. 1.5 feet in the air. I'm shrieking. I think we had friends over because we used to have friends over, you guys. Do you remember those times? So it was a mess. It was everywhere. It was all over the place. And my house smelled like pork for like 4 days. I'm going to plug in my Instant Pot. And most Instant Pots have a broth setting. I'm going to see if you can kind of see it. It'd probably be reversed. So mine says soup broth. And I'm going to set mine for probably about 25 minutes. Mine's going to be more of a broth than a stock. If you want to do it for longer, I'm just doing that so that you guys can see the end result. But normally it would be longer. You want more flavor in there. More time equals more flavor. It's going to kick on. I want to make sure that my pressure valve is in the middle and the neutral setting. It will start to bubble and pop and fizzle, and you'll hear it going, and I'll try to call attention to it. You'll see steam come shooting out the top until it reaches pressure. If you have a janky old Instant Pot like I do, sometimes you have to help it along and pop that pressure valve right up, but I'm cheap and I'm not buying a new one, you guys, until this one's like goes up in flames or something like that. So that's going. Hopefully we'll have broth tonight. Well, we will have broth tonight. You guys just might not see it. So that's broth. And you can use a lot of different, exactly like we said before, any variety of flavors that you want to kind of mix it up here. Okay, I'm going to share a screen again and hopefully it's the right one. All right, here I am. I hope you can see my slides. I did put a recipe for Instant Pot bone broth in the chat, so you can feel free to use that. It's a template. They do use vinegar in theirs, and the vinegar is supposed to help pull the marrow and the nutrients out of that pork. I'm going to scoop back here to fruits because we're going to make some syrup. And when you are thinking about the fruits that you want to save, just kind of like with vegetables, you are going to want to think about the stuff that's going to, if you are saving things, if you cannot use it right away, you definitely want to be able to freeze it. And there are certain fruits that will freeze better than others. I ended up buying last year, I bought one of those big flats of peaches from the farm stand. And when I bought them, I was like, well, I'll eat some peaches and then maybe I'll bake with them or whatever. And, started getting to the point where I needed to make a choice of what to do with these. So what I did was I blanched them and peeled them and then threw them all in the freezer in bags that were the quantity that I would need to use for a recipe. And today I'll be making tomorrow I'll be making peach ice cream with all of those freezer peaches from last year because I had to get them out because I bought a pig and needed to clear out my freezer. But today we're going to make a pineapple syrup. And this is one of my favorite cooking with garbage recipes because when you look at a pineapple, this fruit is so great. You buy the whole pineapple, but that outside core, what could you possibly do with it? And I found a recipe that uses the core and the skin, that prickly skin, to make syrup. And it is amazing. And I make it probably once a month. But there's other things you can do. You can save your apple skins. You can save things like strawberry tops, things like that. Unfortunately, I haven't found a good use for them. Probably somebody has because the internet is full of wonders. But things like that you can save. You can make apple jelly out of apple skins and apple cores. I have a bag. I just keep them, and I cut an apple up for my kids, or I peel one to make a pie. I throw all the peels in that bag and I save them for the future. My kids, we use that apple slicer. So every time I save that core and I put it in there. I've made cinnamon apple syrup before with it, and you take the peels and the skins and you boil them with a cinnamon stick, and you can do that. And just kind of like how broth is for vegetables, I treat syrup that way for fruits. So if it's a fruit waste, I try to make a syrup out of it just to see if it works. Usually that's like taking the leftover pieces of ginger or pineapple and boiling them with sugar and water and seeing what happens. You know what I mean? And then most of the time it works out fine because it's sugar. So most things taste good. Today, I'm going to stop my screen share. So syrups and jellies, those are the primary ways that I have figured out to use up fruits right now. And we're going to make this pineapple jelly. So you can see this is a pineapple. I pulled it out of my freezer. You can see it's still got ice crystals on it. And you'd think I'd learned my lesson, because this recipe calls for it to be cut into pieces, and I should cut it into pieces before I put it in the freezer, but I don't ever. And so I just have all of these pieces that are just whole pieces that are in my freezer just waiting to be used. So the reason that I'm cutting this, I have just boiled it whole. But when you cut it, just like how we talked about the ginger being in your broth, it's going to get more of that pineapple exposed to the sugar and the water. So that means more flavor is going to go into whatever you're making. This is the what is called for. It calls for one large pineapple. So I've never really seen a lot of. There's you see really big pineapples and then you just see regular pineapples. And I would guess this is more along the lines of regular pineapple. If you ever wonder, if there's a specific type to buy, most of the things that when you're making syrup and you're using the skins, that's where all the pesticides would be sitting on a plant. So think about that. Make sure that if you are buying a traditional or non-organic produce, you may want to think about washing it really well if you're going to be using it for something like syrup, just because you're boiling those skins. This is all organic produce that I'm using today, just because then I don't have to worry about that. I still wash it just in case, just animal poop on it or whatever, but things like that. This is another piece of ginger that I found in my fridge that I'm rescuing from mold. And this is going to be a pineapple ginger syrup. This is a recipe from Martha Stewart. It is quite simply one of the easiest things you could ever make. And I'm not really exaggerating. It is super easy. I cut up this frozen pineapple. I cut up this ginger. I'm going to mix it with 1 cup of sugar and 4 cups of water. You can memorize it. It is so easy. If you're wondering how much ginger to use, it's about 3 inches. I used a little bit more because I like it a little zingy. Ginger can be kind of spicy though. So keep that in mind if you are sensitive to that. I have made it with just pineapple, no ginger as well. And it's also still very good because pineapple is great. At least I think so. If you're allergic, maybe it's not. And I have done this also where I've just not measured and I just kind of like, this water looks okay. It's about the right amount, right? And it doesn't seem like I can mess it up. You know, you just kind of keep boiling it. So the way that you make any sort of simple syrup, you can make this as just regular simple syrup. It's 1 cup of sugar. Oh, I'm spilling. 1 cup of sugar to 4 cups of water. You're going to stir it until it dissolves. You're going to boil it, and then you're going to simmer it until it decreases by 1/4. I have a pre-measured, because I'm fancy today, pre-measured scoop of sugar. This is heaping because I also tend to just measure things with my soul. And I was messy earlier. So we'll give this a stir. I'm going to show it to you. Give this a stir. Like I said, you want to stir it until all of the sugar dissolves. And then we're going to put it on my little handy dandy hot plate and get it going. You can see you've got all my stuff in there ready to roll. So far, I haven't had any steam pouring out of my, okay, my hot plate is plugged in. Oh, it's not on though. It's my fancy hot plate system here. So, and when you're just heating it up, there's no real rule about how high. You just want to heat it up until it boils. You don't need to worry about covering it because you want that water to start evaporating off. You want it to start thickening, and it's not going to thicken if you have the lid on. It's probably actually going to get too hot and can start to burn once it gets once the water starts to escape. So I feel like we're really nice and dissolved there. I'll give you a little sneak peek when it is bubbling so you can see what it looks like, and then it'll start reducing. We wanted to get that in towards the beginning, probably from start to finish. You'll have to boil it for about 30 minutes, so I'm hoping that we'll at least get to see some thickness, some thickening up as things go on, and we can kind of get moving there. Clean up my little, I brought a rag this time in a little bowl so it wouldn't get my desk all wet. I'm every time I'm getting a little better. We'll see if I spill something today. Okay, we're gonna move on. I'll share my slides again. Hope you can hear it. It's starting to sizzle over there. My syrup is. There we go. All right, I hope you can see my slides. And we're gonna go and start talking about actual leftovers. So this is, I think, a lot of where a lot of, at least in the US, maybe a lot of our food waste comes from. I guess I didn't really do a big intro to cooking with garbage because I wanted to get going with the recipes, but the whole point, my whole purpose of saving all of this stuff is to cut down the amount of food waste that's in my house. I'm also cheap, as talked about, with my Instant Pot. So I don't like to spend money where I don't have to. And I just really love to try to figure out what I can do with weird stuff. But a lot of folks, I think, have a hard time with eating all of their leftovers, making too much food right off the bat, and then not using all of it again. And I know that, like, we're a big leftovers household. My husband takes leftovers almost every day to work because he's under threat of death if he does not. But he eats a lot of leftovers. He's great with it. We don't have a microwave here at home. So because I have used all of my surface tops with Instant Pots and immersion blenders and different things like that. So we don't have a microwave at home. So if we're saving leftovers at our house, it has to be something that we can heat up on our stovetop or in a toaster oven. And so to kind of just think about that when you're making food. I think a lot of our food waste comes from not really meal planning. And I can show you, if you guys would like to see it, I can show you what my meal plan looks like. I do my meal plan a month at a time, which I know is outlandish to some folks. I have suffered from anxiety and things like that. So doing it a month at a time really helps me see what my month looks like. I can put in all my teaching days. I can put in all of my out of the house days, and plan out so that I can know when I need to take things out of the freezer, know when I need to go grocery shopping. And it really kind of helps me maximize the food that we use. So I know if I'm making a pork roast on Thursday, I want to plan on Saturday, maybe something else to do with that pork roast. I usually like to give it a couple of days just because no one likes to eat the same thing every day. You know, you want to kind of, and I try to make it so that that leftover pork roast gets used into something new. Maybe I'm using it in a rice dish next. Maybe I'm putting it in a stir fry. So you really want to think about that. It also saves all sorts of time and planning, or it saves so much time because you're not making a second protein if it's a meat. You're not having to think about that extra thing to make. You can really just take it out of the fridge, cut it up, throw it in a pan, put some rice with it or whatever, and go to work. So meal planning has been really, really important to me cutting down on my food waste. And if you want to see it, I can go ahead and pop my meal plan up on the screen here. It's over here. So this is what our meal plan looks like. And like I said, I do it by a month at a time. And the gray days are days that my husband cooks. And then if it's
Natalie,
yes,
Natalie, we don't see your meal plan.
Dang it. Oh, it's because I didn't actually click share. Here we go. Can you see it now?
Yes, absolutely. Great.
Donna, you said that I always do it right at the beginning of this program, and I'm just really trying hard to prove you wrong today. So if the gray days on this meal plan are the days my husband cooks, and then if it's something I haven't made before and I need a recipe for it, then I have a link right here in it. I can access it from my phone. We have a tablet we use for recipes. I have a printed out version that we keep on our little dry erase board. And so here's a great example. So these over here on the 14th, I made meatballs, whatever, I don't know what month this was, but I made meatballs the previous month, and I put some amount in a Ziploc bag in the freezer. And then I have a little list that I keep that says, hey, Natalie, you have a bag of meatballs in the freezer, or you have 15 bags of broth, because that unfortunately is a realistic amount of broth that I have in my freezer. And you think, so then I know that I can grab that out. I know I have to take those out the day before. And it kind of helps me stay organized and maximize how I'm using my food. So I'm going to go back to this first screen here. So it's maybe a little psychotic for you. Maybe it seems overwhelming. If a month sounds too far for you, try a week, try maybe 3 days. Sometimes what I do, because I do meal planning professionally, it's one of the services that my business offers, but I do it for my friends too. And sometimes they're like, Natalie, I can't set an exact day. I don't know what my schedule looks like. So what I'll do for them is I will set, hey, here's a week. I'm only planning 3 meals. And here's 2 days of leftovers built in. And then that's 2 more days that you can eat out or have cereal for dinner or do whatever you want that works best for you. We also used the meal planning to try to cut down on the number of times we ate out so that we could save money. So it really kind of has helped us do a lot of those kinds of things. All right. Dairy, quick note about dairy, because we're going to be going into our last recipe of the day. So dairy is one of those things that once it's gone, it's gone. Once it's curdled, once that milk has become cottage cheese, you cannot use it anymore. Or if you can, I haven't figured out a way. But if it hasn't quite gone bad, if it's questionable, if it's beyond the date, but you think it's still okay, that as in it's not separating, it doesn't smell, it's not changing color, then I think it's okay. Those kinds of milks, if it's a whole gallon, here's where this backstory is. We had a big power outage in Oglesby last year, and it was out for a multitude of hours to the point where I was worried about, because I have 2 small kids and they drink a ton of milk, and I had 2 full gallons of milk in my garage fridge. and 1/2 gallon inside. So I was like, I have all this milk that I'm now throwing away. And I was like heartbroken over it. And so I just started Googling, what can I do with leftover milk? And I made my own queso fresco in my Instant Pot. I made paneer, which is usually cow's milk's hard cheese. You can actually take that paneer and put it on your grill. It's kind of like a paneer or halloumi, or kind of similar. It's a very firm, it's firm, and it kind of squeaks when you eat it. It's a very interesting cheese, but you can eat it as a protein. You make it so you heat it up and you press all the liquid out of it, and then you have a block of cheese that you made yourself in your kitchen, in your own house. It's crazy. So I Googled all these recipes. I made a ton of chocolate pudding because it uses a lot of milk all at once. And basically, when you have a product, with health codes, you have a thing, you made it on Monday, you have 7 days from that day to use it, where it's still within a safe date. So usually I kind of use that. So, hey, and once you reheat it, you get a whole new 7 days. So you have to heat it up till about 145 degrees. And kind of leave it there for a few minutes, and then you can use it again. Obviously that's not all of us are going to want to do that and use things over and over and over again that way. But that's just kind of, if you think about it, you're heating up your milk, you're making something out of it, you have more time with that cheese or whatever that you can eat it. Cheese rinds. If you have a hard cheese like a Parmesan or a Manchego or another hard cheese that I can't think of right now, you can save those rinds, and I put them in my freezer, and I add those to my broth. I add them to soup mixes, things like that, and they add like this richness. I added it to my tomato soup, my tomato sauce the other day. They just add this richness, kind of like an umami. That's that umami, like savory, yummy flavor that kind of that gives a something body and warmth to it. So you can add a cheese rind right into it, but just kind of like with your vegetable skins and that kind of stuff. Once you have put it in that broth, it's kind of lost all of its value at that point, but you at least have gotten one more use out of those things. So save your cheese rinds, put them in a bag in your freezer, be a weird hoarder lady like me, you can do it. And then when is garbage just garbage? When it has gotten this mold on it, then it's garbage. If it's something like a bread, like a prepared food, like a meat, dairy, those are just garbage once they have started to mold. If there are other uses for them, I haven't researched enough or wanted to find them, and I apologize for not having that information in this program. But if things have started to actually change their state of being, they are just garbage. If it's leftovers that have reached past their safe date, they're garbage. You unfortunately, if you had reheated it and then put it back in the fridge, you get 7 more bonus days from that thing. But if you leave it for too long, it is unfortunately just garbage. Oops. But some of the things can become compost. If you have vegetable scraps, those strawberry tops that we talked before that you can't really make anything out of, those can be used in your compost. We're doing a composting program coming up, I think, in October. And we can talk about all the different kinds of compost. But you can make those scraps work for you, your eggshells, your vegetable scraps, your fruit scraps. You can turn them into soil that you can then grow things in your garden. Do it with me. You can do it. So it's just another way to reduce the amount of stuff that's in a landfill and then save yourself on money on soil when spring comes around. In the program in October, we'll go over all the different kinds of composting you can do and how to do it. But you want to take those prepared foods, dairies, milks, those kinds of things. Those do not go in your compost. They will rot, they will stink, they will introduce bacteria, and they will attract pests like raccoons and different things like that you don't want. I mean, I guess that's reusing your food scraps, I suppose, but I don't necessarily need more raccoons in my yard than I already have. So that's kind of where we're at. The last thing that's on our list, and I think we're doing okay on time, which I'm excited about, is we're going to take all of my weird bread that I have saved, and I'm going to make some French toast for you guys out of it. Now, we talked about mold. All of these things are different bags of bread that got stale. I didn't use them in time. But they hadn't started to get either that white filmy mold that looks like a spider web, and it also hadn't gotten green or brown or any sort of mold like that on it, like that was in that picture. So we are going to turn it into French toast. The steps that I've got so many things here in the way. The things that I did ahead of time here to get ready. Now I have a variety of different breads. I have sourdough bread, sliced bread, sandwich bread. This is sourdough. And that's, I think, traditional. Like a lot of folks use sourdough for their French toast and for their, I'm gonna stir my syrup over here. It's not really bubbling. It's nothing really to see. But it is starting to make sounds. I've got some brioche hot dog buns. Brioche is a enriched bread, so it's going to have egg and or milk or both in it. I believe brioche has both, so it has extra things added to it. And then I got some wheat hamburger buns. And I just, whenever things kind of get down to a certain point, I start to save them. I just throw the bag, whole bag, you know, I don't take it out of its bread bag. I put that bread bag into my freezer and save it that way. And then it gets to, when it gets to be enough, which to me means I need the freezer space, or it means I want to make French toast or whatever, then I pull that out and I use it for this. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start to go through and tear these into pieces. Now this, I'm making a breakfast French toast right now, but the same way that you would make this is the same way you would make a bread pudding. Same way you would make a stuffing for Thanksgiving or any old day, because stuffing is fantastic. Now I am using a lot of different kinds of bread, and I wanted, they were frozen, so that's going to have a whole bunch of moisture in it. That, see, I wish I could show you this a little easier. There, it has a lot of moisture in it, and if I just left it and left it frozen and let it thaw and then put it immediately into this, it would get soggy and mushy and disgusting, and no one would like it. It would have weird texture. So what I did was I just took all of those buns and I put them on a sheet pan and I just dried them out in a 300-degree oven for like 10 minutes, and that allowed the moisture to get out of it. And made it so that when I add my custard, which is my egg and milk mixture, it will absorb it in a different way. Instead of breaking down immediately and turning mushy, it will become nice and the bread will hold its form and things like that. You might be wondering why I'm okay. I'm now bubbling. Let's see if I can show you. You see it? It's bubbling and boiling and starting to reduce. Just an FYI for everyone, there is no chance our broth is going to be anywhere close to done because it is not boiling in any way. So that was a nice try, Natalie. It's not happening this time. So you might be asking why I'm okay with just all of these different textures of bread, all these different kinds of bread. First of all, I'm not picky. It doesn't matter to me if they're all the same kind, but the thing that is nice about having multiple textures of bread is that they will not all turn into the same mushy consistency. Even if they do get mushy, you know, we're trying to eliminate that from happening. But if they do get mushy, they're all going to get mushy at different speeds because they all have different moisture contents. So it's totally okay that it's a different, it also kind of adds a little textural interest. It adds a little flavor interest because you've got all of these different flavors of bread, and they're going to all taste really good together, I think. A lot of times, like if you make stuffing, if you're not a stovetop gal, which I totally understand if you are, because stovetop is amazing. If you have made, like we make, my mom's traditional Thanksgiving stuffing is a cornbread stuffing, but she does half cornbread and half sourdough because that sourdough holds itself together a little bit better than the cornbread does. I might have enough bread there. We'll have to see, but I don't have enough room in my bowl. So, so then we're going to move on to making our custard. Like we talked about, I've got 8 eggs for this custard. Recipe on the screen. This is not a recipe that I have memorized because it's all different depending on if you want it to be savory or sweet or whatever. This does adapt really well. You can put anything in it. I'm literally, I mean, the kitchen sink, you can put meats, breakfast meats. If you, so this is savory. If you wanted to do like more of a savory egg casserole type, the same thing could be adapted. Just remove the sugar and you can add breakfast sausage, vegetables, cheese, things like that. You could add fruit if you wanted to keep it sweet. Leave the sugar in, put some fruit in it, put some pecans, and then slice some bananas over it at the end. There's so many things you can do with this exact type of recipe. So I'm cracking my 8 eggs. If I had been a smart lady, I would have done this ahead of time, but I thought I was, everything takes longer than you think, when you're going for it. So, and I don't know if you guys know this tip about if you do get eggshells into your thing, it's 10 times easier to get that eggshell out with its own eggshell. So just scoop it out with your own eggshell that you already have and go to work. So this is going to have a mixture of eggs, heavy cream, regular milk, vanilla extract, and sugar. You can substitute whatever sweetener you like. I have used maple syrup before. That works really great. Otherwise, you can leave regular sugar in and put maple syrup over at the end. Ooh, I'm starting to bubble over here. Good news. Sometime later tonight, I will have broth. Sorry, everybody. You guys don't get to see it probably because you don't want to stay here with me for another 45 minutes. You can always, if something's taking a little longer than you think, with an Instant Pot, you can release it before the time. That's no problem. You just press the manual release button and I can show you how to do that. It's no big deal. Okay, we got my eggs cracked. Thing I did not bring up here is a whisk. You would want a whisk for yours. And then I'm going to tip my thing down here. You want to make sure you have a well-greased pan. This will stick like heck. It's going to be eggs and sugar, and it's just going to be like this gobbly, crusted on mess at the end. So you want to make sure that you are really greasing the heck out of that, whatever dish you have. I really like this oblong. I think it looks a nice red on the outside. I think it looks nice when you put it in there. It's probably just a arbitrary size, and I didn't actually pay attention to what that was. Sorry about that. I believe that this calls for 1 whole loaf of sourdough bread. Oh, it came to pressure. Lovely. So I'm going to load it up. I'm going to I eyeballed it about what 1 loaf would look like to me. It is going to compress down once you put if it starts to soak up, it is going to start to compress down. And this is something you can make the night before you need it. It sits really well, takes on, sometimes it's even better if you let it sit for a whole night. Okay, if I add more in there, I'm going to be sad. I'm going to regret it. Okay, so I've got my bread cubes all in my greased pan. I think that's how it wanted me to do it. That's how I do it anyway. And then we're going to add our heavy whipping cream. This is another kind of way that I've used something that could be wasted, because this was a heavy whipping cream that I had bought a while ago for something else. Kind of see, this is how this is coming together. I had bought this heavy whipping cream for something else, and I had it's been sitting in my fridge and it wasn't out of date yet, but you kind of got to just pay attention to what is hanging around in your fridge. And then, when that opportunity arises, you got to kind of remember. So having an organized fridge is always really helpful when reducing your food waste. And if you're not an organized person, which I am not, it's just something you have to fight for and really, really try hard to achieve. If that's one of your goals. If it's not one of your goals, no pressure. Don't worry about it. I have a nice brand new vanilla, another thing that Natalie could have done ahead of time, but didn't. So what we're going to do here is we're going to make this custard. And like I said, it is like eggs, milk, and then vanilla extract. And what we're going to do is we're going to pour it over our bread. If I do have room after the custard has gone in there, I will add a little bit more bread on top, because I like it when it gets that crunchy topping part, the little corner edge pieces. Those are my favorite. So I will probably add some on the top. So I'm going to start to break up my eggs and mix this together. And then what I'm going to do, this recipe that I shared in the chat, it does have like a streusel topping. You can absolutely put that streusel topping on there. I picked this recipe to share because it's a nice basic one that's pretty adaptable. Just realized I didn't add my sugar. How much sugar do I need? 3/4 cup. Again, don't judge me over here. I'm gonna just measure this with my heart, just for times. This is about a 1/4 cup, my scoop that I have in my sugar container. So I'm gonna just estimate it. This is one of those things that if you have somebody that has a low glycemic index or diabetic or something like that, you can really fudge the sugar content a little bit to make it work for whatever your dietary restrictions are. You can change it to a artificial sweetener if that's your thing. Like I said, I have used honey or maple syrup before. I'm breaking up those eggs. Like I said, a whisk would be a better tool, but you know, we're all just trying to be our best, and I just forgot the whisk today, everybody. There are a lot of weird smells in here. There's some pineapple smells, there's some ginger smells, there's some bone broth smells. It's a lot going on up here, folks. And I'm in my office, so it will continue to smell like that for days. So that's always really good. So anyway, there's a streusel topping with this recipe that you can add, and that's great. It adds like a nice crunch on the top. It'll add a little, it's like a mixture of cinnamon and sugar and flour and butter, and it'll add this like nice crunchy topping. I didn't really want to do that. I wanted to make it easy. So what I'm going to do is I have a cinnamon sugar mix that I just make up. This is actually my camping container when I go camping, that we take cinnamon sugar, and I'm just going to sprinkle that over the top. That sugar is going to give it a nice crunch. That cinnamon's going to give it a great French toasty kind of flavor. And that'll be good enough. The streusel topping did have cinnamon mixed in, so it'll be similar to the flavor profile of what it was originally meant to be. So this isn't perfectly mixed, but it is good enough for today because no one wants to watch me stir for however long it's going to take with a wooden spoon. Okay, so now comes the moment of truth in an office where you pour eggs into bread. No one should do this at home. I'm positive about that. So we're going to just start to, we've got our bread cubes, bread pieces here, and I'm just going to start to pour them in. It's going to, I think I mentioned this, you can let this sit overnight. It can kind of meld and pick up all that yummy flavor into the bread. And it will be really beautiful if you wanted to do that and let it sit. That is the also nice thing about toasting your bread, because it does give you a little bit more flexibility for, sorry, I lost track of my focus. It gives you the more flexibility for how squishy it's going to be. Toasted bread will hold up to sitting overnight a lot better than regular soft bread. So you can see, like I talked about, as I added my egg mixture, I am gaining extra space. So I'm going to take my extra bread cubes that I had left over, and I'm going to start to add those on top, and I'll just start to push them down. I'm getting my hands all messy, folks. This is a messy business today. It doesn't have to be messy for you. I'm just more of a hands-on gal, as we all have learned over my tenure here at the LaSalle Library. So we're going to, so basically your process here is going to be that you will, I feel like I lost my chat. There it is. You will let this sit overnight if you want to. You can pop it right in the oven. You can, you know, make it and then make it later in the afternoon. It's super flexible. What I'm probably going to do tonight is I'm going to let this sit until tomorrow, and I'm going to cook it for like breakfast for me and my kids tomorrow morning, and then save the leftovers. You can also, after it's cooked, we do this a lot. You take that finished French toast casserole and you freeze it. You can freeze it as is. And if you have somebody like my husband will take it to work and put it in the microwave at work and heat it up that way, works amazing. You can pop it in your toaster oven. It gets nice and crispy after the fact. So feel free to do that. So here's my kind of omelette of breads, leftover bread pieces. You can see, and as it sits, it's going to soak into these pieces on top. I have extra custard because I believe if I had been reading my recipe, I would notice that they wanted me to do this in a 9x13, but I didn't because I like this pan. And this is enough for my family. So I have this extra custard. What I'm probably going to do is take this extra custard and use some other leftover bread or even a loaf of bread. And I'm going to make a second one and freeze it. I'll bake it and then I'll freeze it and then I'll have it for the future. But what I probably will do it in is one of those metal trays, those metal like garbage, like disposable baking trays, like a square one. So I'll use that one for it. So then it's time to add my cinnamon sugar. Sorry, I just tilted you back up. I hope you're not getting seasick. You just take your cinnamon sugar. And again, I use my heart to measure things. If you were not, I'm doing this now. Since I'm doing it overnight, I probably would have waited and did it next day. But I wanted to show you guys what it looks like. And it's not going to hurt with cinnamon sugar. If it was streusel, absolutely you would not want to add that until the day, like whatever time you are baking it, you would want to add it right before. So yeah, so that's kind of what we have today, folks. I'm going to show you really quick our syrup to see where that is at. And then I will show you that. And we will take any questions. If you have questions, you can feel free to start asking them now in the chat. Or forever hold your peace. So you can see we've already reduced down a little bit over here. And it will continue to thicken. I'm probably going to move it down to my actual stove because it'll have a little bit more consistent heating. But yeah, you can see it's already starting, the pineapple is starting to break down, and it is already kind of cooking down that water and thickening it up. Thanks everybody for coming. If you, oh, so B says you can also scramble this mixture like scrambled eggs if you're short on time. Absolutely you can, except mine has sugar in it. So don't, it won't taste the same. It will taste like sweet scrambled eggs. So make sure that if you are going to do that, it's absolutely a great idea. If you're doing a savory version, 100%. Also, if you're doing a savory version, you can add things like, I always add ground mustard, salt and pepper into mine to give that flavor right from the beginning. So instead of that sugar, you would want to add your salt and pepper and seasonings. You can add herbs, whatever it is to take the flavor. If anyone's wondering where I'm at, I still have about 15 minutes left on my broth. This valve on the top, you can't really see it, hold on. This valve on the top, if you did want to release it, you would just tap it, but it's going to release a lot of steam. So you want to make sure that I a lot of times will just put a towel over it like this and then use like a wooden spoon to knock it out of place, and it'll start to let the steam out right away. Bonnie asks, what do you use the pineapple syrup for? I'm not going to lie to you, Bonnie, it's cocktails most of the time, or mocktails. You can add those to anything, like you can put it over your yogurt, ice cream. Like something's really good is like to add it to, like if you have vanilla ice cream, you can add it over your vanilla ice cream with like a cherry, and then you've got like a little pineapple upside down cake, ice cream sundae kind of thing. That's really great. You can put chunks of pineapple with it and have that. But yeah, mixing it with just plain seltzer, you have a fancy pineapple soda mixing it with plain seltzer. So great. If you are an alcohol drinking person, talk to me later and I can give you some recommendations. But yeah, they're perfect. And it says, you know, when you look at all the recipes, it's like use it within a week. I've had it for 3 weeks sometimes and haven't had a problem with it molding. It will mold. You'll know when it's bad. It'll get little mold floaters on it, but I've kept it for 3 weeks before and it's been fine. But you can use it for a variety of different things. It's really fun to add to seltzers and stuff. We have one of those soda streams, so we just keep the plain seltzer and then add it to the pineapple. And my daughter drinks it and has a little fancy drink. So it's you can use it for a variety of different things. It's not a one-trick pony, that's for sure. Do you have any other questions?
I have one, Natalie.
Yes, great.
much more serious than this very entertaining cooking show.
Perfect.
When did you start doing this meal planning by month? Have you always done this yourself as a cook? It sounds me.
So I actually, it all started during COVID. I had a really, really hard time with anxiety during COVID, like I'm sure a lot of us did. And I was cooking all the time. And I really wanted to not eat the same things every day. So, I mean, I've always meal planned to some extent. Usually I would do it like about a week at a time, or whenever I was buying groceries, I'd buy groceries saying, okay, what do I want to have this week? And I'd plan it out a week at a time. But then with COVID, I had a lot of leftover food that I was trying to use or had in my freezer. And so I would say, you know, whenever, like I would try to plan those into my meals to try to save money because I had already made it. I already did all the work. And then also try to maximize what I was cooking, just because things were so hard to find at the grocery store a lot. So I wasn't a food hoarder, and I wasn't that person buying 6 loaves of bread. I wasn't the reason why you couldn't find bread, don't worry. But I would try to buy 2 or 3 at a time just so that I had them. And so like there was different things like that I was able to get, or I had a good deal on them. I would buy 2 of them. And so I would make sure, like, if I knew I was going to make meatballs, I'd make double meatballs, and then I would have more for the future. So I started doing that about 1.5 years ago for myself. And I started doing it professionally about 6 to 8 months ago for people that also kind of wanted to try to maximize things. But like I said, not everyone does it by a month. I find a month works better for me because I like the structure. A lot of folks do it usually by week. And sometimes, like I said, folks like to do it. I want a week at a time, but I don't want it to be set to a specific day because my schedule is not rigid. My schedule is very rigid. I'm a mom, so I have a lot of, our routine is really important to us here, but not everybody works really well with a rigid schedule. And I totally identify with that. So, yeah, the meal planning, it's just kind of whatever system works for you. I tried to do it kind of a week to 2 weeks at a time. And I really found a month, because I could look at the big picture, worked better for me. So what my routine is, and it's kind of psychotic, and I understand if you were backing away slowly, but I grocery shop virtually online every Thursday. I do my grocery order. And then the last week of the month is when I do all my meal planning. So usually my meal plan, like for September, I'll finish it up like August 27th-ish. And then I print it out, and that's the meal plan. And we do have days in there that are nothing is planned, or eat out is planned. And we do swap days in the week, like, oh, you know what? Our broccoli is going bad faster than we thought, so we better do the broccoli today, which means we have to do this. So we do swap things. It's not like, we're not rigid as far as if it's not that day, then things go off the rails and we don't do it. It's more maybe we have to eat this meal on Tuesday instead of Thursday, and then maybe the Thursday meal ends up being eating out, and that happens too. We're not all perfect, but really having the schedule really, really helps. And it also helped because I'm trying to make my children just eat everything. And so if they know that it's on the meal plan, they can like get a little plan in their brains, like, okay, if Thursday, it's not a meal that we love, but we're going to eat it anyway, that kind of thing.
That is truly amazing. I did some internet searching because I had a patron who asked me how to sneak the vegetables into the children's menu plan. And I mostly vegetable. She's a big fruit eater and is a healthy eater.
We're the same.
But not the vegetables. So I don't know. Do you have anything else that you want to offer me as a tip on telling this patron about?
Well, I think variety is always helpful. If you always have the same kind of broccoli and they don't like that kind of broccoli, it's going to be a harder sell. If they know, it's steamed broccoli, I know I don't like the texture, but say you're trying to get a kid to eat broccoli. Try broccoli 3 different ways. We have broccoli roasted a lot because it gets nice and crunchy, and that textural thing, our kids tend to have a problem when things are mushy. Zucchini is a no-go almost all the time. As like if you just steam it or you cook it in a pan or whatever, they hate it because it gets that mushy texture. But I started grating zucchini and making it into a zucchini latke, like a potato pancake, but made only out of zucchini. And hey, when you fry something, it tastes great, but it's not, it's got more nutritional value than a potato. So that's great. And you can use all that zucchini that people have so much of. I think we talked about zucchini latkes before. So I think that the number one thing is just getting a kid to try a little bit all the time. We make vegetables almost every day. I mean, I'm not perfect. My kids don't eat them all the time. But they know that they have to at least try it. Some are hits, some are misses. We grilled zucchini in a little grill basket the other day, and it was a big miss, everybody. It was terrible and no one liked it. And I think one person even gagged. But we like the broccoli, steamed broccoli was a no-go. But roasted broccoli, when the tops get crispy, crunchy, then that's an okay thing because you get that crunchy texture. And we also have made, mistakes with seasonings before. Something was too spicy or whatever. So just kind of going mild and trying a variety of different ways is really helpful. But I do also put carrots and celery and all that stuff into my spaghetti sauce. We'll put things like, we'll take the stems of the broccoli and we'll put those on a shredder. And then we'll mix that in with like a stir fry or like a noodle. Like when we'll make like a pork stir fry, and it looks like a noodle. So everybody eats it because they think it's a noodle. But it gets all the nutrients from a broccoli stock. So, and it also works because like my husband doesn't eat a lot of vegetables. So like it works for everybody. So it just kind of, I think variety, just trying different things, seeing what works and being okay. If they honestly say it's like, they hate it, just being like, okay, well, they tried it and that's all I got to go, We're in that process. We're fighting that fight every day though.
I think that's good information to pass on. I am trying to use up my zucchini tonight. When I get home, get ready for it now.
Okay.
Zucchini tacos.
Yes.
So I'll let you know.
Great job. Put a pumpkin seed on it. It makes it nice and crunchy. Gives a little texture.
All right.
Bonnie says to blend up your greens, mushrooms, onions, and mix it in with meat. So yeah, that would be almost like you wouldn't even notice it because you're blending it. It would be almost like a paste. You would mix it with your meat. That's a great idea. As long as it didn't have any green on it. If there's green on it, they know it's not fully a meatball. Okay. So I'll work on that though.
Tomato sauce.
Yeah. Tomato sauce hides all sorts of just villains, doesn't it?
Right.
Yeah. So that's, oh guys. Look at it's coming together. It's all coming together. Look, it's about halfway. It's about halfway there. Sorry. Does anybody else have any other questions, folks? If you ever have, Donna has my email. If anyone has questions about meal planning, they can, I could talk about meal planning all day. Maybe Donna wants to do a class about meal planning. We can do that on another library night.
Should.
So, yeah, absolutely. We could do that.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you get back to finishing that up and getting it down on
I will bake
stove.
it. I will probably, I'm not going to bake it tonight, but I'll probably bake it tomorrow.
Make sure you do. We don't want to see it get moldy.
Yeah, I don't want to, guys, you'll never know. I'll just feel a secret shame that I'll have it all. I'll have it to myself and I'll say, oh, Natalie, remember when you told them you sounded like a big boss who was going to cook all their food and you threw that away? No, it'll be my secret shame. You won't ever know about it.
Okay.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Natalie. Bye-bye.
Right, bye.
Thank you, everyone.